Good morning everybody, welcome back to Indycar on this Wednesday morning. Today I'm transmitting from Anniesland and it's a pretty blustery day out here. Sorry, the weather just seems to be going from one extreme to another. And on the subject of things going from one extreme to another, there have been a lot of complaints recently from Facebook users, particularly in the independence movement, in the pro-independence movement, complaining that there are gangs of British nationalist trolls who are mass reporting people's posts to Facebook to try and get them either put into Facebook jail or have their accounts suspended and investigated. This is the latest tactic online coming from the British side of the argument, which is to basically get as many people as possible to complain about somebody's posts to Facebook so that the account is suspended, thus frustrating the efforts of the person to get their message across. It's a form of sabotage, and it is using Facebook's rules in a way that they were never intended to do. And it's producing basically it's producing censorship of some of the more active Facebook pages and some of the more, shall we say, individual types of pages. Now, one of the things somebody said to me the other day was that if you post a picture of kittens or your dinner, then your post has no problem getting out there to everybody on the internet. But as soon as you post anything political, particularly anything pro-independence, then nobody's seeing your posts. And I discovered recently that people were not getting notifications of my shows, and also that Facebook had updated its system and changed the way people watch videos on live stream. So that now if you want to watch a show on live stream, you have to press the following button. In other words, you have to become a follower, and then you have to click on see first, which means that you get to see it as it's transmitted. So there have been a number of changes which have caused problems for people trying to get political messages across on social media. The government has also been publishing or trailing various statements about the fact that they're going to clamp down on what they call fake news, and they're setting up some kind of agency to investigate unsubstantiated news items online. In other words, let's say somebody like myself makes a claim that there's something going on in Holyrood. It's unsubstantiated, there's no evidence for it. Well, the BBC's sort of social media police, or the British media police, can come on and shut me down and investigate me, and it basically silence whatever you have to say, whether it's substantiated or not. These are worrying times for everybody involved in social media, particularly because the British state recognises that social media is where the battle is going to be fought for the next independence referendum. And because of that, shows like Indycar and like there are lots of other shows. There's Truly Scottish TV. There's another new Scottish television channel starting up as well just shortly, and even people live streaming are going to be applying for licenses to go onto terrestrial Freeview, which means that eventually after years of trying, pro-independence campaigners might finally get onto mainstream channels with their opinions and have the unbiased and unspun, non-BBC, non-British filtered news brought onto a mainstream platform. So that's good news for the future, but only if the British state does not clamp down on the media. Remember, they've learned the lessons from Spain. They've been watching very carefully how the Spanish government crushed the Catalan vote for independence, and how they crushed out their declaration of independence and basically jailed everybody. Now, the BBC is, as you know, basically it's paid by the taxpayer, but the money that goes to the BBC has to go through Whitehall. It has to be approved by government, and there are many Tory high hegians, if you like, who are in the BBC as directors, who are deciding what is shown. So the message coming from mainstream media is primarily government approved, government filtered, government edited, and particularly Scottish television in this particular case as well. It's rife, as you know, with biased news. There's been lots and lots of news items on the health service, and trying to compare the Scottish Health Service with the English one, which is impossible because they're run completely differently. The way that we judge the performance of the Scottish NHS, particularly accident and emergency, is different. We set a higher standard than they do in the rest of the UK for our accident and emergency units, and the targets that are set, we know, are virtually unattainable. And that's the whole point of having a target that's so difficult to reach, is that it makes you try that bit harder. So lots of things in the news recently have been trying to cast Scotland as just as bad as the rest of the UK, but it plainly isn't just as bad as the rest of the UK. For one thing, statistics coming from places like KPMG are showing that Scottish businesses are not failing at the same rate as they are in England. New startups, companies going into liquidation, the numbers for Scotland compared to its size of population are far lower than the rest of the UK, and also business startups in Scotland far exceed those in the rest of the UK. People are investing in Scotland, businesses are growing in Scotland, the NHS is doing better in Scotland. Everything up here is actually better than it is in England, and the British government cannot stand people to know that. They're constantly trying to do Scotland down and make it sound like you're living in a third world country. Today there were reports that in Glasgow particularly, nearly a quarter of children are born into grinding poverty. And they're trying to make out that this is somehow the Scottish government's fault. But if you think about this for one moment, the people whose children are in poverty are those who receive benefits. The benefits are not under the control of the Scottish Parliament, they're under the control of the British government. And the British government has capped those benefits. It has removed benefits for those with 2 children under the age of 16, so they can only get benefits for one of those children. And just by simply cutting the benefits to these people, the British government has raised the number of children born into poverty in Scotland. And it's not a reflection on the way Scotland is run. It's a reflection on the way the British government is funding benefits. We have very limited control over benefits. We have a very tiny number of powers which allow us to top up benefits when they're cut. But remember that Glasgow has massive housing estates on its periphery, in which there is a lot of unemployment, a lot of single parents, and a lot of children born into households where very few people are working, and even those who are working in insecure jobs with incredibly low pay. And people who are actually in low pay, there was an instance recently where a Scottish MSP, one of her constituents came to her and had to ask for money, had to ask for a crisis loan, even though she was working, because she couldn't afford Christmas for her 2 children. She couldn't afford to buy them any presents whatsoever. She was so poor that she could barely afford to feed her children, clothe them, and keep the house warm through the winter. She had nothing left. Her benefits had been cut so much, and this is her in-work benefit. She was working her tail off for this. Still wasn't getting enough money. So don't listen to a lot of the mainstream media. There's a great deal of misinformation about, and the tactics of the British trolls, shall we call them, is to operate in gangs and try and shut people down by making spurious complaints about the content of their pages. Now remember, in the current climate with the government wanting to clamp down on fake news, this is going to look bad for some people whose accounts have been frozen, for those who are not being allowed to post. Some, including I think Cliff Selby, recently had his account suspended because of troll activity, complaining about his site to Facebook and having it closed down. So there is a threat out there, and with Mundell now massing his 100 troops down at Victoria Quay, for what purpose nobody seems to know, and with funding from who knows where, because nobody seems to know where he's getting the money to pay the massive wages of this new British government in waiting that he's preparing, there are a lot of question marks hanging over everything just now, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the news coming into you from the British state media. Instance this morning of the flags. Now, for some reason, the Daily Telegraph has decided that Nicola Sturgeon is running around Scotland pulling down Union Jacks and insisting that only salt tyres fly. A load of rubbish, a load of fake news, basically made up by the media to monster Nicola Sturgeon and make her sound like she's some kind of mad Nazi who runs about ripping up Union Jacks. This is just the beginning of the new dirty war that is starting for IndyRef 2. And it's the reason why we haven't got a date yet, because if we had a date right now, then the BBC and the rest of the British propaganda machinery would be cranking out more and more allegations about Nicola Sturgeon and, you know, how she's a Nazi, or, you know, she eats babies, or she whips children. There'll be something ridiculous going into the press every single day of the week. Anyway, to cap it all off today, there actually isn't very much real news going off anywhere at the moment. It's a slow news day. But in terms of Scotland, it's a good day because Fergus Ewing, I think, has been announcing today massive investment in the superfast broadband network all across rural Scotland, and an investment in new cell towers in places where cell phone reception is either unavailable or poor. Scotland is about to get its entire internet infrastructure completely, thoroughly modernised, and Fergus Ewing has actually staked his entire career on it and said that if he hasn't made good on his promise to connect everybody in Scotland to superfast broadband by 2020, he's going to give up his job, he's going to leave. So he's staking his reputation on it. They're putting £600 million into it this year, plus another, I think it's 100 million for new cell phone towers as well. So most of it will be superfast fibre broadband going out across rural Scotland, and in places where they can't do fibre, they're going to put in additional phone masts for the 4G network. It's all good news really, and I bet you see nothing about it in the British media at all. I heard a little bit about it this morning on Radio Scotland, but that's extremely unusual to hear any good news story on the BBC. Anyway, I'm off. I've got to do a couple more tests today, but I look forward to speaking to you all tomorrow. Keep the chins up and keep watching the show and keep sharing it widely, and remember, make sure that you're following the show and make sure that you click that you want to see first, right? Those two buttons. Click following, click see first. Also follow the show on YouTube as well, where we have a channel there that you can see the show on. At the moment, Indycar has reached 93,000 people this week, which is almost a record. That means we've had something like just over 60,000 direct views and over, I think it's 36,000 interactions. In other words, people commenting on the page and on the show. So it's wonderful news. Please keep watching, please keep sharing. The new media is us, and we're taking over social media, and we're going to put the truth out there, whether the BBC and the British state likes it or not. And we're not going to let any trolls try and shut our pages down. I'll see you later. Bye for now.